Welcome to the very first episode of the Chamber's new podcast to the community. This is
Bob McKenna,
President of
the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce.
And I'm Shelley Smith. I'm proud owner of Premier Rapport, where everything is workplace culture. So Bob, why did you come to me and talk to me about this? What's still?
So actually, I didn't come to you. Remember, I called you from my phone. I was driving down Jefferson Avenue, and this idea popped into my head. And Shelley and I had been friends for a while, and I had just seen her moderate the second event, chamber event. In fact, combined chamber Penn Sherm event.
Yes.
And I said, I want to do a podcast, but I do not have the technical skills or the communication skills to do it on my own. So I called Shelley, and I said to her, "Hey Shelley, I've got an idea. Consider this over the weekend and let me know what you think." And I said, "Would you like to combine and do a podcast, a business podcast for the Peninsula?" And she said, "I don't have to think about it over the weekend. Let's do it." But that was 6 months ago. And we're finally, our busy schedules are finally kind of meshing, and we're going to make this work. So this is our first attempt.
Absolutely. So it's fun and exciting. And some of the goals are going to be
continued. And nerve-wracking.
Oh, it's not nerve-wracking. Bob is Bob. He's always got it. But the goal is to add on positive layers around things that the chamber is already doing. So reinforce and talk a little bit more about the specific things that you're doing now and why this is going to add to that.
Okay, I've got some notes.
Go for it.
So I've been in the job for 17, 18 months now, something like that. And for the first 17, 18 months, people have been saying, the Peninsula is lagging economically behind other similar MSAs in the country, Peninsula and Hampton Roads area in general. And one of the reasons that they think that the Peninsula has been lagging economically is that we have an inferiority complex, or we lack confidence. And me being the kind of outsider who can see the forest for the trees, and I'm not an outsider in that I'm a carpetbagger. I've had my house here since '03, but I'm not a business leader. I was in the military for many years. But I look around the Peninsula and I go, why do we have an inferiority complex? We have great universities, we have great businesses, we have the largest industrial employer in the state of Virginia at the shipyard. We have Jefferson Lab, we have NASA. Why do we have an inferiority complex? And then I thought, well, maybe the job of the Peninsula Chamber is to show the people of the Peninsula and outside the Peninsula what great gifts we have here and why we should be succeeding economically. Mm-hmm. So just about everything that we're doing these days is with that in mind.
One of the favorite things that you do that I've seen over the year is the different panel discussions that you're holding that's kind of reinforcing things that are going on. We need to do more of those. And we definitely can. And, one of the things is the comments that the viewers and the listeners will help us kind of spear, and for you to come back and say, maybe we should do this, maybe we should talk about this. Because one of the great focuses that has huge synergies is the workplace, the workplace, the economics of the labor force. Who's staying, who's leaving, and why.
Right.
So one of the things on the podcast that we said we would do is kind of break this down into 20-minute consumable listen to or watch segments, because we're usually in traffic to and from at least 20 minutes. So we thought that would be a way to kind of break it down. But do things like, ripped from the headlines. So we're inside of Bob's office. So he had a couple of inside business pieces here. And I immediately opened up, and there's two things that are completely relevant to the work that the Chamber's doing inside the community or with other community leaders. And one of them, straight from the headline, is Hampton Roads Innovation Collaborative aims to build high-tech ecosystem. And so why don't you tell them a little bit about the work of what you can talk about behind the scenes of, and for this, I'm thinking two things. I'm thinking about the mega city conversations and what do we call our region, but then I'm also thinking about all the innovative either startups, the different 757 pitches, the need to keep the talent here and to have that innovative conversations to remain here, which to me pushes the whole conversation around the 64 corridor, and that this is really a tech corridor and an innovative corridor. So I've done a lot of talking.
Good. Keep talking.
Well, I'm just thinking that many of the conversations that you've had in the different panelists and the spotlights that you do going to the different locations, that a lot of the conversations in the pains and wounds of executives and owners is always around the workforce. And then we have great military presence here, and we have a variety of internships in the universities, but that talent is leaving. So what can we do to nurture that talent? Because, you know, one of the studies that was done that John Martin did.
John Martin
did.
Institute of Research, right?
One of the pieces, if you weren't actually at that presentation, is talking about the 2030 labor outlook. And if you think of it from a triangle standpoint, typically from a generation, from an age standpoint, the closer you get to the top of the triangle, that's the older workforce or the generation. There's usually fewer of those. Mm-hmm. Well, for at least a decade, there's lots of books out there that have talked about that was going to change. It was really going to turn into more of a exactly. So the top of the triangle is going to widen, meaning there's going to be more of the older workforce. So the boomers and the Gen Xers as we age, and then coming in the millennial and the Z generation, there's going to be fewer. So What do we do now? Because we're already behind the curve and we haven't done anything to not only attract the talent of tomorrow, but keep the talent, and for people to see this as a mega region and a reason why they need to stay here instead of going to maybe some of the other cities. So I just think that these conversations, and then here's another one, businesses must grasp the millennial thinking. Well, gosh, when are we going to stop talking about the millennial thinking and start worrying about these are the future leaders and that their wants and needs are just happening more rapid than we did as Gen Xers and boomers because of technology. Yeah. And so to me, the whole thing comes back to how can we become, live and breathe the mega region, the innovation region, which keeps people here and brings people here from large companies to branching out and creating more growth like the Fergusons.
So do you have an answer for them?
The answer is what it is you're doing and you're participating in. You know, we've been talking about these renaming the region and or the mega regions I've been here for almost 20 years. I've been here for more than 20 years. And we're still talking about it. When are we going to do something? And you're a part of the doing something now.
So there's a lot of questions and conundrums wrapped up in that topic. And I think one of the ones that I was talking about earlier today, I was at the Richmond Hampton Roads collaborative effort, and we have an executive committee. The executive committee met today at William & Mary, and the one thing that we always talk about is what you're talking about is how does a region grow economically? And it's all about talent. It's talent, right? Yes. Realtors always say location, location, location. Business people who are always looking for where their workforce is going to come from talk about talent. Mm-hmm. And we're getting beat here in this region because other regions, I think, are attracting talent better, and especially the young talent. Mm-hmm. So you talked about how the kind of pyramid is becoming more of a rectangle or something, I guess, and people like me and eventually you are going to be staying in the workforce longer, and the young people are going to go elsewhere. Yeah. So we need to find a way to reach out to the young people, and millennials aren't necessarily young. I mean, millennials now, the older segment of the millennial population is 40, right? Exactly. So they're actually already leaders in our community. And then it extends down to about 23-year-olds.
Yep. I've got a son that's at the tail end of that. And then I've got the next. And if we think the millennials were something, I've got some Gen Zs at home, and it's going to be a whole nother ball game, especially as you start to talk about the automation and what AI is bringing. So I think that.
So that's a secret to attracting them is to be seen. So one of the things that you mentioned just a few minutes ago was the regional branding initiative. And I've heard people call it a rebranding initiative, but I think we need to make sure that we're not calling it a rebranding initiative. It's a regional branding initiative. Okay. And it's kind of an analysis, research-based analysis that's going to go on for about 8 months or so. And we're going to actually kind of delve into how can we better market this area. And I think that's one of the keys to attracting talent in retaining talent is to really be able to tell our story, tell the Hampton Roads story, whether we call it Hampton Roads or Coastal Virginia or Tidewater, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
How do we market this area? And I think there are many great aspects that we need to be marketing, and one of them, especially here on the peninsula, is the science and research. So we have Jefferson Lab, and we have NASA, among other great institutions and universities, and the shipyard, for instance, the only place in the world that designs, refuels, builds aircraft carriers, the supercarriers. So we really need to start focusing on this idea that we have a very large concentration of scientists and technical experts and engineers right here on the peninsula. And we're not thinking like we used to think in the 70s and 80s. We're looking to the future. We're looking to AI. We're looking to digital shipbuilding. And we're looking towards light rail, autonomous vehicles, all those types of things that actually will appeal to younger people who are looking to the future.
Yes.
And instead of old people like me who are content driving the car instead of having somebody else.
We don't want loss of control,
or
right?
A machine driving. Yeah.
Well, I think that your point, it takes us back to how we started this conversation and why the podcast is that having future guests, so it will not always just be us, so future guests on that are doing some innovative things, that are doing some targeted things, so share some best practices and tips of whether it is in the small startup phase, the small phase, the mid-size, or some of our larger giants, if you will, around here, that it comes back to that we already know that this is a great community, and some of you listening and watching know, but we need to spread the word. So it comes back to the confidence, the awareness. It's how we talk about and compare our region to other regions and why people need to come here, and not just come here, but stay here. I mean, we're known for the hospitality side, but we need to be known for more than that. I think our area is known most for not the technology, but military and hospitality, and we need to broaden that.
Right. So 40% of our economy roughly is military-based, defense-based. And we do have on the peninsula, we have several bases. We have all 5 services represented. So we have to focus on that, but we also have to broaden our outlook. Absolutely. And in one of the ways that we broaden the outlook is by marketing the area within and outside, externally and internally. And that Richmond-Hampton Roads collaborative effort, which is exploring becoming a mega region and defining ourselves as a mega region from Richmond down to Virginia Beach, with the peninsula at the center, that's part of that. And it's also part of the regional branding initiative is to market this area better and show first our own citizens, but then externally the great advantages to bringing a business here, for instance, or the great advantages to coming back here after you graduate from college, or to go to college here and stay here. So,
or to retire from the military.
Or to retire, and that's right, leave the military. And we have about 4,000 on the peninsula every year that retire or transition out of the military. And boy, what a great source of talent that is. So we have to focus on that also.
Absolutely. So going back to the podcast piece, one thing that we would like to begin to get everyone's input in is naming it. Right. We've kind of gone back and forth and gone a little bit frozen into, I've gotten a little bit frozen into what should it be called. And so we thought it would be fun to get the viewers and the listeners involved in this. So we need to craft, I guess, kind of what that is, but we can start with, you can obviously respond to the link that you're watching and comment on what should it be called, with our goal being basically 20-minute segments, talk about, what's hot in our community now, from headlines to having guests on, sharing best practices, maybe giving some preview of things that haven't been in print yet, but yet we can still talk about. But definitely it will always keep a focus on what's happening in our community now and how we need to future think as an entire community in order to stand up our area as the mega region, the regional area, and not just kind of we kind of get lost sometimes, and we shouldn't get lost. We should be loud and proud for that. So
we'll call, is this a podcast?
It's a podcast.
Okay. So we're going to call it the Podcast Branding Initiative.
There we go.
So we're looking for your input, and how do we brand this podcast, and any other input. topics that you think we should be covering, people that you think we should be talking to, just about anything.
Absolutely. And you can submit your ideas and questions. If you're watching this, you can actually see a couple of links that you can submit your comments. And then if you're listening to this, you can obviously reply, and you know how to get in touch of Bob at the Chamber to be able to give information as well. So this was the kickoff. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more information.
There's my card.
And there you go. That's it. We thank you. Signing off, Shelley Smith and
Bob McKenna. Thanks.
Have a great day.